Twisted Metal 4 is a very interesting addition to this franchise. The previous game was ridiculed to no end for obvious reasons: the physics, the level design, butchering of characters prior to 989's hold on the series. Twisted Metal 3 has a lot of layers, but I feel Twisted Metal 4 rectified a lot of the issues people really disliked, making this game quite underrated. Sure, it still does have issues just like every other game in the series, but I feel like it's a genuinely great time, and I wanted to talk about the good aspects and some of the bad ones today and see where this game stands. We'll start with the contestants once again. Instead of going with a returning roster, 989 decided to make one full of new characters, with old ones returning as bosses, received with a mixed reception. I appreciate them putting in the effort to try to make some new characters and put new faces in. This is the only game in the series, aside from Twisted Metal 1, releasing with the higher ratio of new ones. Older ones like Slam, Axel, Minion, etc. are all represented through bosses that you need to unlock through finishing the tournament mode a single time, also making Twisted Metal 4 the first game in the franchise where you're able to unlock something. Twisted Metal 4 was also the one and only game that has a guest character in Slob Zombie. There was a lot of attempts to do something new here, some of it good and some of it bad. When it relates to the drivers, it is an acquired taste. If you're someone who touches yourself in the bathroom to Roadkill's ending in Twisted Metal 2, saying it's a better story than Elmo's adventure in Grouchland, you're not gonna like the new additions. On the other hand, if you do like the meme-styled humor, they are almost perfect. The amount of gold coming out of these cutscenes is actually unbelievable. I cannot help but laugh looking at some of these people. We got Pizza Boy, Melvin, Sweet Tooth being the new head honcho. It's all ridiculous. The cutscenes and voices are perfect meme material. Hearing Big the Cat whenever Trash Man talks, the voice actor of Sonic voicing Pizza Boy, and whatever the hell Pizza Boy says in his ending.
Yo, what up, ST? Check it, drop a player in a bucket, heck, trick down hoop ride, all chromey, homie, with my name on my props. Oh yeah, it's gonna be quick. So quick I bounce without my shadow and all that. I believe it was intended to be taken this way instead of being more serious, which obviously is going to turn some people away. I do love this nonsense, so I'm a fan of these endings. Calypso has the quote-unquote serious ending of the game, I would say. This is the one and only time he is also playable, which again was received with mixed reception by people. Honestly, I could care less, but Calypso is an icon, so changing him away from being the head of the tournament is going to make fans mad. Also, missing out on so many favorites does turn people away as well. No Outlaw, Traditional Warthog, Roadkill is missing, Spectre is gone. I'm not entirely sure what the reasoning is for this. I wonder if they saw the backlash from players and decided to change up the roster so they didn't have to butcher already established characters, because how can you mess something up if they're completely original creations? We were introduced to classics like the Joneses family, making Twisted Metal 4 the darkest game in the series. In their ending, Sweet Tooth kills a family, and every time you destroy them in battle, you are killing a family. I never want to spend too much time talking about characters since they don't really matter to me. Obviously, they are an important part of the game, so we do need to talk about them somewhat. I do get why people don't like these, but I enjoy them since this is easy pickings for nonsense. If we compare it to Twisted Metal 3, the endings have somewhat of a substance. Joking aside, a few of them are good enough to give you a laugh, like the aforementioned Joneses family ending, Meter Maid, Calypso's, they're all fine. All in all, Twisted Metal 4 cutscenes aren't good whatsoever if you want to take them seriously, but if you want it in a jokingly or ridiculous manner, these are enough.
Hello everyone, it is your friend Monty. I want to remind you to leave a like on the video and subscribe. It is good for your fucking health if you do so. I'm not someone you want to mess with.
Most importantly, we need to talk about the gameplay, which this game has a lot to it with plenty of changes, mechanics, bosses, and so much more. As I mentioned before, you start with a few characters, and finishing the story once unlocks the bosses, which there are 9 of. A huge complaint about this game is actually the boss battles. Having one at the end of each level really damaged the vibe of a boss, losing the intimidation factor all of them would originally have. Fighting Crusher, then Moonbuggy, Super Thumper, and so on becomes redundant, especially since they aren't very difficult. Moonbuggy can be an asshole sometimes. The rest of them, aside from Mr. Tooth, are complete jokes. He is the only one I consider a true boss anyways. None of them are much of a threat. You can plow your fist right into them, killing each of them with little to no problems. Even playing as a boss, most don't feel like anything special. Sure, they have more armor than regular characters, but even in Twisted Metal 3 with Minion, he felt like a superstar. You were able to destroy the whole tournament with him. These bosses can also make 4's tournament drag out for so much longer than it needs to. Lots of people found out strategies to cheese the game, such as putting proximity mines on the other ends of teleports for easy insta-kills. Otherwise, you're stuck battling slightly beefier regular enemies. And if you've seen seen my ranking video of all the characters, a few of the starting roster are actually better than the quote-unquote bosses, which makes no sense. Controlling much better in some cases, or even having higher damage outputs, you name it, and some of the regular characters probably have it over a few of these bosses. I always found these fights to be annoying unless you're playing on the hardest difficulty, since they're more boring than anything. Some do have cool designs, Super Axel, Minion, Sweet Tooth, Super Thumper, just not fun to battle. Speaking of no fun, that is where the Tooth comes in. Sweet Tooth is one of the most ridiculous bosses in the whole franchise, or even in gaming as a whole, honestly. As we know, this fight is unfair. Watching people fight him for the first time is hysterical since they don't know what to expect. The reactions are always perfect. I don't blame anyone for not knowing what to do, since you actually need to understand the enemy's pathing in this game so you can reliably win. Or you can put proximity mines on the roof and kill him instantly. Not only having the highest armor in the game, he also has the most overpowered special in the entire franchise. Henchman is unacceptable, and the fact it released the way it was is beyond me. I made a video recently about the worst boss in the series, and the only reason I did not stick Tooth Ass in that spot is because you can instantly kill him. Thankfully, when I was a kid, I found out this exploit, otherwise I probably would have never beaten him. It would have been fine if Sweet Tooth was the only boss in Twisted Metal 4 because of how deplorable this is. To my knowledge, Jim Buck, the lead programmer, told me the amount of bosses were a last-minute addition, hence the no bios or drivers created for them, and funnily enough, there are placeholders of Twisted Metal 3 images in the game's code, so they possibly planned on making drivers, most likely just didn't have time to do it. While the bosses are quite lame, on the other hand, Twisted Metal 4 has 26 characters, which is more than any other game in the series. An absolute slept-on aspect of this game is the sheer amount of content. Sure, you do have similar choices in some sense, like the melee characters, Axel and Quattro, Drag Queen, Super Thumper, and Goggle Eyes. It does suck balls having clones. At least there's enough characters that the clones don't ruin the entire game. We're not having a 2012 moment where actually half the roster is clones. Regardless, clones still are a big blow to any game. I would love to have a whole roster of characters that don't feel similar to each other. Thankfully, the ones who are not clones are fun to use. General Warthog is an interesting choice who essentially has a trap as a special weapon, allowing players to set up pussy play with proximity mines and your special through a teleporter. I never felt many of the choices are actually boring, aside from a select few. I enjoyed myself playing through as everyone on the roster. It just felt a little bit redundant to play as characters that felt very similar to each other. We also have 16 levels to play on, which is the most in the series to my knowledge. This time around, I feel 989 was much more expansive with design, making maps more porous, more high grounds, destructible environments, traps, and even introducing the first fully interactable thing in Twisted Metal being the crane. Stuff like this was never really experimented with in this series, and it's a shame since this is really interesting. While also being very exploitable, allowing players to finish the first level in seconds, it's still a really cool idea. Neon City has a train, the shuttle to bring you to a platform with a bunch of weapons, the carnival has a roller coaster on the outer ring of the map with a Sweet Tooth-faced car going around with nothing controlling it, allowing for more diverse experiences throughout your tournament run. The largest complaint with Twisted Metal 3 was probably the level design, being very simplistic, not having much to interact with, explore, or destroy. Twisted Metal 4 felt a lot more expansive overall and fixed the largest issue we all had. I genuinely believe the Carnival and Construction Yard are some of the best levels in the series. With the increased quality in map design, we also got a few stinkers from overambition. Road Rage and Minions Maze are two that just suck. There is so much unnecessary fat that could easily be trimmed off. For instance, the entire outer ring of Minions Maze could easily be removed, and the level would play so much better because of it. When it comes to Road Rage, the outside highways are just there. Sometimes the AI randomly treads in weird corners, irritating players who don't know all the spots. And it's surely an understandable frustration since most of these areas don't even need to be here. Thankfully, as I said before, I know these maps like the back of my penis, so this is never an issue for me. A conspiracy theory here is the fact all the maps in Twisted Metal 4 were designed with having 7 opponents in mind. Watching some of the demos, you can see footage is used fighting 7 enemies, plus the Game Shark codes you've seen me play with in the past. Experiencing something like Road Rage or Minions Maze with 7 enemies makes them feel 10 times better. There's more frequent action, and that's what everyone wants, right? Twisted Metal 4 sadly has a lot of frame rate issues, so they needed to reduce the amount of enemies down to 5 at maximum without a Game Shark. So we're just stuck with how Minions Maze and Road Rage are unless you use a Game Shark code. I'd say the tournament maps flow quite well aside from those 2 crappy ones, creating a much better experience for players. We also have the bonus levels. These are constantly criticized due to the simplicity of them, and from what Jim Buck told me, that was the point. Lower effort level design just to have in the game for people to mess mess around on. This art style was supposed to be referencing Tron, and I can see it after he told me. It was like, oh, it clicked with me. There's not much else to say about these. The only one that's considered decent is probably the Citadel. I just stick with the regular tournament maps, but if you truly want to have more Twisted Metal 4 action, these are here for you to play on. Another new feature added to Twisted Metal 4 was the Create a Car, which is something lots of people want to have return. Having 9 cars to pick from with slightly differing stats, technically adding even more to the pool. Plus the 3 unique specials specific to Create a Car. Laser doesn't count because it's just a reject brother to the RC car special, bringing the total of specials up to 29, which is unreal to think about. Having a save slot for each individual character special. This was a last minute addition, of course, and that is instantly apparent when you see how poorly balanced all the Create a Car vehicles are. It's quite sad how weak the Crimson Fury car is, for example. Each of these have less health than Microblast does, even the large monster truck. That thing does have superpowers on its own though, becoming the fastest car in the game just by going in reverse. The 4 specials are Twin Torches, probably the worst special in the whole franchise, Detnoball, a very powerful choice, Laser, which is basically a bad version of the RC car, and Funny Bomb is technically one of the strongest specials in the game, but due to how hard it is to hit the sweet spot, I would not say that. It's really fun to make your own characters, hearing the stupid voice lines and whatnot, but playing as these characters makes the game very difficult since they have the same health as a child's papier-mâché project. With some cars, you lose like 15% of your health just from a fire missile. It's unacceptable. The Create a Car is just a mixed bag. It's there if you want to have some fun, but it's not something to really be sustainable since it's very primitive and the balancing is so bad it kind of turns me away from even using it. As we know, with Twisted Metal 3, the physics were not very good. It's no secret there, constantly flipping over if you go too fast. There is a way to handle that madness, but it takes some time to pull off. In this game, the flipping over issue was rectified entirely. If you flip over, the car immediately reorients, allowing the player to continue rather than waiting for the slow animation. Sadly, we still do have some physics issues when it comes to corners. Sometimes the player's car can get stuck while falling off of ledges, causing frustration similar to what 3 gave off, just nowhere near as annoying and happens way less often. Using turbo, jumping, or hyperspace will always fix this issue. I really wish we were free of this curse, but all the PS1 Twisted Metal entries have problems with the physics in their own right. A lot of the time, it's just you trying to learn how to handle the physics and prevent nonsense from happening, regardless of which entry you play. In Twisted Metal 4, I noticed the slower cars have problems getting stuck a lot more. Someone like Orbital getting stuck just doesn't happen very often. Thankfully, the AI are not so aggressive to the point they're pushing you into a locker or knocking you around so you get stuck in these situations. That is until you play on Immortal difficulty. Every playthrough starts on Scout, which is the easiest mode. People will go through it with no issues whatsoever, most likely not even dying regardless of who they play as. After you finish the game and get your ending, the game will restart so you can keep going through the tournament, and it gets slightly harder until you reach Immortal, which is the hardest difficulty, which also scales even further if you keep playing. Since Immortal doesn't cap out for a really long time, most people won't ever reach it without a Game Shark code. This system is a good idea on paper. New Game Plus is not a foreign concept, just the execution is the problem. You need to finish the tournament 3 times to reach the basic Immortal, and then reaching maximum Immortal rank could take you possibly weeks of playtime. Most people simulate tournaments through deathmatch on hard mode, because no one wants to go through that. Most people haven't even experienced how tough this game can be due to that alone. Maximum Immortal is really hard. The cheating is out of control, the AI special spamming is disgusting, there are times you cannot even move. It is really fun and can be very challenging, and I'd recommend anyone to try it out. So this is half good and half bad, which seems to be the common theme here. Lots of really cool ideas, concepts, specials, designs, but it's being held down by a lump of shit on the bottom. Create a Car is a really cool aspect while also being poorly balanced, with only half the specials being worth a damn. We have lots of characters, but a quarter of them are clones, expanded upon level design with over-ambitious aspects being too large in some cases, physics issues being fixed and then having a new one replacing it, obviously being less annoying, but my point still stands. With every positive aspect comes a negative one on top of it, which is really unfortunate since I feel the core game is very fun to play and one I typically come back to even before I ever made a video on this channel. It's in the same vein as 3, with playing a bit slower than the older Twisted Metal games, but feeling a lot more refined and much better graphically. I did not touch on this for Twisted Metal 3, but the 99 entries do look very good for a PS1 game. Going from Twisted 2, then 3, and finally 4, you can see a noticeable jump. effects in Twisted Metal 4 being a large focus of attention, car model detail, turbo effects look great with the lighting. We just have one major issue all these fine details cause that we have not touched on yet, and it's by far the worst issue 4 has, and it's the performance. Typically with Twisted Metal games, frame rates don't drop very often and keep stable. With 4, it constantly drops frames, especially when you play as certain characters. Goggle Eyes is a prime example of this. He can literally crash the game from using his special weapon. Super Thumper and Drag Queen also cause a lot of frame rate problems as well, truly ruining the experience of some players since no one wants to deal with the game running at 5 frames a second. We touched on the levels being designed for 7 enemies and then being decreased to 5. This is the reason why. The game just cannot handle 7 enemies at a time. You don't even need to be shooting your weapons to notice the major drops. With all these problems, it makes for the only game in the series I'd actually say playing on emulation is a much better experience. Aside from the upscaling features, overclocking removes the dropping entirely, making Twisted Metal 4 run at a smooth 30 frames a second, being the smoothest entry in this series on the PlayStation 1. Again, great potential being weighed down by the hardware, but thankfully we have a way to fix this issue this time around. Another large issue is the balancing of special weapons. As I said with Sweet Tooth before, just broken. Like, it's disgusting how broken that character is. A lot of the other special weapons are really weak and don't really feel like much of a special at all. Sure, there's stuff you can do to make them stronger, like the weapon swapping exploit, making you shoot faster, removing the cooldown of the next shot, in combination with a special like Trash Man or Super Augur. Just speaking on base damages, most of them don't really feel impactful, making characters like the Joneses family or Captain Grimm feel essentially useless as picks. Thankfully, this is offset due to how overpowered some of the regular pickups are, like remote bombs. Proximity mines have plenty of different uses and a very creative weapon addition, by the way. Freeze motes are a great addition, so you don't need to waste energy freezing an enemy, or if you want to impede a whole group at once. Then of course we have the almighty auto lob being one of the best pickups in the franchise. Getting a good hit on an enemy can instantly kill a few characters. This could be one of the special weapons due to how overpowered it is. I'm not sure what the balancing is here or why remote bombs and auto lobs are more powerful than basically every special in the game, but whatever. You also have weapons in the same vein that are completely worthless. Rain 2, Rain, Speed Missile, and Napalms are all not really worth picking up. Then the traditional stuff like Power Missiles, Homing Missiles, and another new pickup in Merv are all viable choices. So we have the same formula going on, something positive being weighed down by negatives. There's a lot of new content, characters, weapons, and levels, which makes you happy. Then you look further into it and you find the negatives that offset those positives and make you struggle to understand how you truly feel about this title. Twisted Metal 4 to me is a really fun game. I really enjoy the soundtrack, the general feeling of the game, messing around in deathmatch on stupid levels like Tic-Tac-Toast, which is essentially a party map, playing on Maximum Immortal, playing through with an ally like Brothers of Construction. If you take the proper measures, this can be a really fun experience, and playing through emulation, overclocking, and a few Game Shark codes, also playing the mods makes this even better. Similar to Twisted Metal 3, we have mods that fix a lot of the issues that we've mentioned, the balancing, increasing difficulty, weapons becoming stronger, changing the level design to some capacity, specials becoming more powerful, amongst so many other changes. These come in showing the potential of what Twisted Metal 4 was capable of, and even without mods, this game feels really great to play. Just playing these makes it feel even more amazing, and I'm a huge fan of the creator's work. I would recommend anyone to play these just like the Twisted Metal 3 mods if you want to experience an even better version of Twisted Metal 4. I do love Twisted Metal 4, at the same time it does stuff that's really frustrating, always having a large negative aspect attached to the bottom of whatever positive thing you're talking about. As we highlighted earlier, Create a Car is a great idea, having poor balance, lots of new weapons with only half of them being good, having the potential to be the best performing Twisted Metal game on the PS1, but the frame rate issues really hold it down amongst so many other aspects. People always say this is one of the worst games in the franchise, which is definitely not the case. Even with the negatives I brought upon to you, this game is more than playable, controls very well, has plenty of content, and sufficient challenge as long as you follow the right prerequisites, such as emulation, overclocking, and using Game Shark codes to remove the whole grinding through the tournament thing. People usually don't want to do this, but if you do, it's genuinely one of the best Twisted Metal experiences to me, and I can never get enough of playing this. Before making any Twisted Metal videos, I always went to go back and play it once in a while. I always enjoyed the vibrancy and variety of level designs. Some of them are bad, of course, but that's only a couple of them. Most of them are really fun to play on. Since I don't care about taking these endings seriously, I'm always looking for a part to cut out and make an edit with, They give so much material to me, similar to live action cutscenes in these older games. Twisted Metal 4 is a really tough game to place on a tier list. Similar to Twisted Metal 3, it's an acquired taste. If you don't care too much about stories and are willing to jump through a few small hoops, this game can be amazing. On the other hand, if you don't want to jump through said hoops and really care about Twisted Metal stories, you're not going to like this game very much. I felt confused for a while on where I wanted to place it, but I'm feeling more towards the higher end since I play it through emulation and already have the stuff in place for me to enjoy the game at its fullest. If I was playing on hardware, I would most likely get tired of the bad frame rate problems, especially since I like to play on Immortal, which kills the game and will light your PlayStation on fire. I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks about this game. Do you like it or do you not think it's very good? I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts in the comments below.
Yowzers, it's Axel here. I want to come in and thank all of the channel members we have. All of your support is much appreciated. Shout out to every single one of you for being a hero of the ages. Hail our Lord Panther.